Have you heard of the coronal heating problem? The coronal heating problem is an apparent paradox where the atmosphere of the sun is about 200 times hotter than the surface of the sun. This seems odd at first, right? The sun is a source of energy, so how can it get hotter the further you move away from the sun? This is what happens. Well, it actually isn't much of a paradox when you start to consider what temperature actually is. Temperature is a measure of the average energy of an average particle in a certain environment. So although it is true that the atmosphere of the sun is 200 times hotter than the surface, this doesn't tell the full story. Because as it turns out, the density of the sun's atmosphere is 1 billion times weaker than the density of the surface of the sun. So although the temperature of an average particle is a lot higher, there are far fewer particles, so there's still millions of times more energy in the surface of the sun than the atmosphere of the sun. Okay, so this kind of explains where the energy comes from, but it doesn't explain how it got there. The true coronal heating problem isn't the source of this energy, because that comes from the sun. The coronal heating problem is how the atmosphere is heated, because most sunlight, which carries the majority of energy away from the sun, passes right through the atmosphere without getting absorbed by anything. But there are two potential answers to this problem. Both of these have observational evidence to support them. None of them are conclusive just yet, and it's very possible it could be a mixture of the two. But those two theories are as follows. The first is the nanoflare theory. So the atmosphere of the sun is dominated by magnetic fields. In those magnetic fields, we get solar flares, bursts of energy in the atmosphere of the sun. We see the solar flares somewhat frequently, but the nanoflare model suggests that there are uncountable numbers of tiny solar flares that we'll never be able to see happening all over the atmosphere, and this acts to heat that atmosphere to temperatures of around 1 million degrees Celsius. The second theory is called the wave heating theory, and this is very similar to the first one, but instead of tiny flares happening all over the atmosphere of the sun, these magnetic fields that stretch up into the sun's atmosphere are vibrating, they are wobbling, and that in turn carries energy from the surface of the sun up to the solar corona. So there we go, that is an overview to the coronal heating problem. If you want to find out more about our local star, give us a follow.